Good morning. Today is, well, it's Saturday. It's somewhere around the, I should have looked at the day before I started doing this. Anyway, it's Saturday. It is about 30 degrees out. With the wind, it's chillier than that. We are in an area that is north of where we were last week. First time we've been in here in a bit. We're going to have a look around and see what we can find, and basically because we haven't been here in several weeks, we'll be doing this for the first time in a while, and that usually means we'll find what we find and go from there. That's the plan, and come on along, let's see what we find. Thanks. And we're back. So we are basically down the hill a ways from where we started out, heading towards. We are checking through an area we haven't been in realistically in probably 6 months, maybe a little bit more. If I remember right, last time we were here there was snow on the ground, so it would have been winter, so it might even be longer. Certainly hasn't been this year. We haven't, knock on wood, had a lot of the white stuff. We have had some dustings up here, but we haven't, I haven't had a chance, and at this stage late in the game, as we're halfway through February, I doubt. I could be wrong. I would prefer to be wrong, but I doubt I'm going to have a chance to get out and do any snowshoeing. The conditions just haven't been here. Unless you head north, and that has other logistical issues. Namely, a lot of the forest road gates are closed to people without traffic, and they're closed for a reason. I found out that if you get in there and you're found in there or require rescue, you are facing hefty fines from the Forestry Service, and then your name is mud, and that could have a negative effect, potentially, I would think, at least theoretically, on hunting licenses and such. And so since I do have one up there, why put that at risk? Anyway, so like last week, what's going on in the community is kind of quiet. There's some kind of a research project going on in central Massachusetts. I don't like the guy anyway, so I don't really mind ratting him out. Where he's asking for boots on the ground to do some monitoring near the Connecticut River. Excuse me, I have an idea of where he's talking about. There has potentially been some degree of activity out there in recent-ish years. But that's not really gossip. That's actual field work, so I'm not going to badmouth past a point. So let's have a look. Normally in the past, I've launched a drone. Now, it's not so cold today that the drone wouldn't operate due to weather limitation or temperature limitations, but the projected wind level is not proving to be what they said. I left the drone at home to avoid the temptation of putting it up in potentially windy conditions because, as I've said before, I have better things to do than chase the thing into Massachusetts when the wind steals it, because that has happened. Not all the way to Massachusetts, but I have had the wind grab it one Christmas Day when I was up here, mainly because my family does most stuff on Christmas Eve for Christmas. Not that that matters, or doesn't apply to this, but my experience with that is the wind grabbed it. I couldn't get a decent lock on it, but I was able to bring it down after it had traveled 600-700 yards at extreme temperatures. Although when I did get it back, there was some decent footage that I got video-wise. Kind of gonna, for lack of an idea of what to talk about otherwise, without looking out at this, a wetland that I know and know moderately well from previous incursions into this area. I have had wood knocks over in that concentration of things, and if you walk over that way, there actually is like a little bluff over there like a plateau where you could see out. And I mean, something over there looking out could see me right now just fine, and I wouldn't be able to see it, from the theory of one of them having cover and doing some... I don't believe they do the wood knocks, if they do wood knocks, for our benefit. I think it's a signaling between them to kind of like let them know we're in the neighborhood. Because, let's start out there. My theory is not that they're anything Pongit. If they were, they would have been found. And they remain elusive to us. I think you're up against something more, and probably more intensive, because they actually do continue to elude us on any official basis. You're more like, it's more like the people that are in the Amazon trying to make contact with uncontacted tribes that have kind of wised up to, like, the common cold might wipe out half the tribes, so they don't want contact. Unlike the North Sentinelese that have basically just made it known, if you land on our island, we will effing kill you. Like that Asian missionary guy found out. He went there, and lo and behold, they weren't really feeling friendly and hospitable, and he ended up dead because of it. Not everybody wants to have Saturday tea with the Jehovah's Witnesses at their front door, and these guys are kind of willing to kill you over it, so make a note of it. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the tribes in the Amazon, just as an aside, are aren't dissimilar, and as they have people coming in like the loggers and all that prey on them, that's only going to reinforce a nasty disposition towards outsiders. There was a movie made where they ran into a tribe that were like, they make the tribe into cannibals, but you don't need to be cannibals to have your reputation for killing whitey for coming into your neighborhood when you're not wanted there. You know, so I mean, most of the tribes I've seen on documentaries, but these are the contacted ones, are reasonably friendly to outsiders, but I still suspect it really goes a long way to help if you show some respect towards them and their ways, because, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere, and it's not like the Amazon is the easiest area to get into, so they may be your way out. You know, so something to think about if you ever end up there. You're going to really want to be able to trust your guides. And where can I find a I'm not going to die slipping on the ice kind of situation here, or get my feet wet on this charmingly cold day? This is always part of the challenge of getting over there. I may need a segment break because I don't trust that rock enough, and I'm going to go around and go up a little bit further to... Some could actually make a valid argument too. It might just be easier to like enter the wood line further up on the other side of the stream. And I see my spot. You wouldn't be wrong, but we didn't do that today, so is what it is. That looks jumpable, like easily jumpable, so. I'm gonna cut through here, and, ow, bastard. Oh, you son of a bitch. Yeah, I'm gonna take a segment break while I do this. It's jumpable that I want to focus on the task at hand, so I'll be back in a few seconds. I'll be back. Yeah, we're back. We jumped. It wasn't that bad, but I don't like to be distracted when you're focused on balance and things like that. Anyway. I think, like I said, you're dealing with more of a similar circumstance to the people that are trying to make contact with uncontacted Amazonian tribes that don't really want to be contacted. Now, I've had a couple of experiences in recent years that make me wonder if they're like partially physically different in the way that they are able to utilize infrasound, and I don't have direct proof of this, but I've had a couple of experiences where activity has been afoot, pun intended, I guess, and the easiest descriptor for the weirdness I encountered at the time would be likened to infrasonic activity. That reminds me, I need to, bear with me one sec, I won't take a segment break, but I am going to start the infrasound recorder, because as of now, that is a standard operating thing. Okay. Optimize. The difference between where we were yesterday and today is we're down in a dip, so there's not a lot of wind. So I don't necessarily anticipate necessarily a lot. I mean, we're getting normal sound readings now. I mean, largely because I'm talking, but not a lot of wind. So wind is usually the source of background everyday infrasonic source. So anything we get in here today will be a little bit more interesting from that standpoint. It's one thing I've made my business is to be a little bit more knowledgeable about infrasound, so that when people sometimes will post something, like when people actually have enough gumption, for lack of a better word, to consider actual scientific aspects of their research and not just go out looking for stick piles. You heard me. Because a lot of people, that's what they're doing now. Why? Because they saw it on the interwebs. Just like everybody thinks that all aliens are these big bubble-headed gray guys that have big eyes, because they saw it on the interwebs. Ever since the 90s, aliens are grays. Before that, they took more forms. And on that front, just to make the point, I think the multiple forms aspect is more likely, because Earth has been putting out radio, TV, now satellite signals for close to a century. So anyone nearby that has any kind of similar technology has a very good chance that they've seen our noise and they know we're here. So multiple groups might have interest in swinging by and seeing what we're up to. And then again, we may be the only ones out there, although that aspect of the Fermi paradox is pretty damn depressing. I would prefer the latter, so long as they don't come here and want to like lay eggs in our brains or something. Away from aliens, back to Bigfoot. Yeah, my biggest critique right now is a lot of the people are straight up lazy in their approach. They just want to go looking for stick piles and then self-delude into thinking, well, that must be Bigfoot. That right there, that big thing down there, that's a root pile. Bigfoot did not do that. That is something that nature did. I had one gentleman on Facebook the other week, and I'm not causing dispersions at him. He's kind of a friend of mine. We do talk now and again. I didn't realize he was this far into the woo. What this actually is a tree that has been shifted. It's not quite a root ball yet, because that tree is in the way. Let me indicate. See how that's pointing up that way? So unless, not me, dummy. The camera's being an asshole. Thank you. Unless this tree falls first, that one's not going to fall over just yet. So, this guy and I are on friendly terms, but he told me publicly, too, that he had pictures of portals. You know, a la the wacky world of Matt Johnson. And no, I'm not going to call him Dr. Matthew Johnson, because I don't think he's qualified to be a doctor. When you are batshit crazy, you should not be a therapist. And yet I suspect that he is. And that is concerning in its own right. Definitely a couple of trees down in here We haven't, but we've had a lot of wind through here as a rule every year. So I guess that's to be expected. Yeah, so I've decided in the new year that my target audience is basically a target audience, I suppose. And not that I was ever the most diplomatic person in the world, but certain people that are a facet of the community don't get my respect. Matthew Johnson is a predatory cult leader. He might as well be running Bigfoot's version of Scientology. Fuck him. And anyone who believes in his stuff, you probably should go looking for a real therapist. Todd Standing, which we approached last week and the week before. If you don't think he's a hoaxer, you're either a sock puppet account of his, or you are a blithering moron who is vastly gullible. Those two or three CGI generated big feats he did, you can do that in a number of ways. I have on my computer a program called Blender that can do near CGI level effects. You can do a lot of different things with it. I'm not accusing Michael Merchant of what he did, but he had a short video the other week of an orb going through his truck. And I'm not accusing Michael of anything. I've been out in the woods with Michael. I've been able to converse with Michael enough to gauge him in his integrity in what he does. He and I do not have the same take on the subject. He is much more woo than I will ever be. However, he does make some valid points, and I can attest to the fact he is a very skilled naturalist. So when he is out here, he does subscribe to my theory of know the land. Go through the land, get to know the land, be able to walk through the land and look out here. If you cling to the trail, you're not going to find anything. Or if you do, it's probably hunters. You know, a lot of people find these interesting little stick structure things. If you're right near a trail, I found one time. It was right next to a trail, right next to a pond. Guess what it was? It was for duck hunters. It was it's what they call a debris hut, which is a style of hunting blind. Any long-term hunter knows this. Anyway. The point I make with this Blender program is this. Michael Merchant is in his truck and he sees an orb fly by. This is an instance where I can take a specific software program and a specific instance of an alleged orb, and I can tell you that Blender can take the video segment of Mike in his truck and make that the background, and then there's an effect where you take a CGI three-dimensional generated globe and make it into a luminous light ball. And then you can set up a motion path through that. And it will fly past Michael in the truck to various effect. And that is well, how would you do it? Well, I just told you how. I just told you how. I'm not accusing Mike of anything, but I will also say that I've been doing Bigfoot daytime and night since 2004. I have never to date seen an orb. And if I did, I would scrutinize the living shit out of it, because there's so many things in nature that an orb can be. The ones I've seen on the very entertainingly amusing ghost hunting shows are at least 99.999, keep making nines, 27 more times % of the time, they are dust, bugs, or a combination of the two. It's not what people want to hear. I'm gonna probably get a comment somewhere. You know, orbs are real. Well, show me your evidence. That's the invitation that I made to this gentleman about his portal pictures. I'm like, okay, you got pictures of them? Show me. If it's something actually real, I'd love to see them. I will freely admit, if somebody shows me compelling woo evidence, I will look at it in the true nature of a skeptic, not the coalition level of serial debunker, but a skeptic, and I will consider any and all possibilities of what it can be. And I will give you honest feedback. And if I can't really explain what the bleep it is, and it goes in the I don't know column, I'll say so. And I'll thank you for being the first person to show me something compelling. If on the other hand, it's obvious BS, I'm probably going to lose a lot of respect for you. But you wanted to show, if you're using me as a gauge for your BS, because I'm going to, come right out and say so if I feel that way, all the power to you, but I'm not afraid to hurt your feelings in the favor of the truth. That's my stance on the subject. I think people who do genuinely know me and my work in this subject respect that about me. I am true to my principles. And I'll be blunt. I favor the truth of the matter over any sense of popularity. If you're chasing popularity, you're part of the community, and that's why the community is not one, and why it's basically a joke. Because you let popularity blind yourself. You care more about the number of subscribers you have on YouTube or some such, or the likes on Facebook. And you start doing shit to generate that stuff, because it's like a Pavlov effect. And that probably isn't the right word, but what's the right word? It's a dopamine effect. That's what you get dopamine from. It's like basically you're like the squirrel or the hamster in the cage, and when you do something good in a scientific study, they give you a pellet. And you like those pellets, so you are trained gradually to do the thing that gives you the pellet. Are you acting true to your nature now, or have you been trained to do something else? The latter is true. And I'm not likening this person to a hamster. That would be insulting, but here's the thing. I actually have been a guinea pig in a psychological study myself, so I can say this with an element of I've actually been there and done some of this, and that's how some of these things run. And the study I was taking part in was to measure the anxiety levels of hoarders when taken through behavioral exercises. I may have mentioned this before. And no, I am not a hoarder. I was in what's called the control group, the alleged normals. Now, they put you through this simulation, and they put images that are going to invoke a yes or no response. But it happens fast enough that anyone, no matter who you are, is gonna mess up. And the messing up is what causes the anxiety level. The theory is, if you're a hoarder versus somebody who's not, the normal person's going to get annoyed they're messing up. That's human nature. The hoarder, on the other hand, is applying this to their disorder, and their anxiety level, in theory, is going to be higher. Or at least I think that is the gist of the study. And why did I go and do this? Well, number one, it had nothing to do with the $50 they paid me. I was actually just more curious about the experience. And may have done it for some therapeutic reasons of my own. Unfortunately, they were not met, just because the things to address some triggers that I have were not present in the test the way it was done. It is what it is. But regardless, it was an interesting experience, and I've been invited to do one actually this coming Tuesday. I probably will not be able to make it to, but, and in case you're wondering, no, these things are not mandatory. They're completely and utterly voluntary. And if I can't make it, they'll fill the slot with somebody else, and I'm on their calling list. They asked me if I want. I'm like, sure, why not? I mean, if they're interested, I'm not going to do anything that involves. I'm segmenting all over the place, or tangenting all over the place, aren't I? But Obviously, I'm not going to do anything that involves medication, because, no. And so here is what I was talking about before, a plateau where you can look out and see where I was standing prior. This is one of like 2 or 3, and you can see, it's not a perfect view, but if you peer through here, you can kind of see out a ways. And I was over there. So proof of claim that there's a couple of vantage spots over here where you can kind of look out and see into the area across the way. If you're thinking in the mindset of a hypothetical forest person, I'll use that, although I usually just go with Sasquatch. And like, how would they do it? Well, they'd probably look over there and they can see out a little bit in this range over there. I also have the theory at night they have more feline-esque vision than we do, and they can see in the dark better than we can. But I also have a hypothetical that is educated, I'm going to call it educated speculation, where allowing for infrasound. Bats are an example of a land-based mammal that have perfectly good hearing and sight, and yet they echolocate their prey with sonar. So you have a precedence in the animal kingdom of a mammal that can do that. So for all the serial debunkers out there, this theory, although you might think it's completely outlandish, it does have a precedent, which ups it in the feasibility index. And I mean, I know it's your nature to scoff, because that's what they do. That's what the narcissist has trained you to do. But that's what you're dealing with at that point, is applied narcissism. And that's another element of the community that honestly you can't take seriously, because I cite by example a lot of the time. So moving away from a completely, at least hypothetically unrelated theory, here's a perfect vantage spot right here. And let me demonstrate if I can get the damn zoom to work. Of course it doesn't want to, because it's being you're just not going to play nice. Although I have had experience in the past where it's colder temperatures, the camera doesn't want to play. But if you can look real close, you can see from there all the way over to there. And you're standing back up here, something looking out way over there on the other side can't see you, but you can see them likely. I wish I could get the damn thing to zoom, because it would illustrate the point better, but it's being a douchebag. Moving on. Anyway, so, moving from that subject to the next. Some examples of community silliness. You have the vaunted Bigfoot forums, like who ever so arrogantly put out, we're the best like Bigfoot discussion site out there, which is such a load of crap, because they have the idol worship thing going on in spades, where you have, I'm not going to waste my time on their usernames, but there's a handful that have been there forever, and because they have a bazillion posts there, they somehow have more credibility than somebody coming on for the first time, which is complete BS, because what they have at that point is reinforced confirmation bias, if you want to throw out a skeptical term, which is applicable to critical thinking skills. And they have recently been, one guy shot down a reference to Matt Johnson, but it was disheartening to see, well, what do you think about the things of Dr. Matthew Johnson? Well, Dr. Matthew Johnson shouldn't be a doctor, because he's batshit crazy. And he's a complete freaking nut job who takes advantage of people that are more gullible than himself. And the reason I say he's batshit crazy is because at one point he had a head injury. I'm not mocking his head injury, but I also know a number of people that have said they knew him before and after that. And he was definitely not the same person after the head injury. And he has, over time, kind of evolved, or if you want to use the word devolved, into a more arrogant, borderline predatory personality that definitely is a textbook narcissist, not unlike a certain bookstore owner on the other end of the spectrum. Interesting, we use the word spectrum, which is meant in this case in a psychological sense. But both of them have a lot more similarities than either one would really care to admit, which I find very entertaining. Anyway, the Bigfoot forums is a place of confirmation bias. I find a lot more usable content on the Bigfoot subreddit where you have people who are, despite the fact they suffer from the need to respect everybody's opinion, which, you want to be civil, fine. But the people who come in posting the wackadoodle related stuff, I take my sunglasses off, I get right in the eye. Give me 1 second. Ow. Let that deter. The eye still works, I can still see. That's always fun. I don't know if you can hear that sound, but that is that tree scraping up against that right there, just to dispel any kind of... You're still not zooming. Yeah, oh well. Guess we're not going to zoom today. It's not that cold though. That's annoying. The other side of the spectrum is the serial debunker camp, and I'm not just going to pick on the trollish, and they are the uber Facebook example of it, because the thing, and I call them hoaxers mainly because, again, I covered this a while ago. Another example of a vantage spot. You can kind of see out over that way. Critical thinking has enough informational material online that you can see what the nature of it is. And there's a whole process to it, and it does not conclude immediately just saying that's not what that is because I said so, and then basically mocking and deriding anyone who disagrees with you. That is basically a serial debunker who's fueled by his own ego-stroking narcissism. Notice I use the N-word a lot. And not the horrible N-word, but the psychological term. Because, unfortunately for the tender egos of these people, the term is applicable. So, I don't care to get eye poked by those, so we're going to remove them from the game. Yeah, so the International Skeptics Forum, the JREF in its former incarnation, is another interesting example where you have a couple of people who have been posting forever, and because they say so, you mustn't go against them because, they're the forum gods because they've been there, they posted 20,000 times. Of course, they've been there for 15 years too, but, one doesn't have anything to do with the other, of course. Yeah, right. No bias here at all. And yes, when I'm saying these things, I am confirming my own confirmation bias. You're right. But I'm going to be a complete hypocrite here. I have enough time in the field that I know the stance of certain people, and I know how I feel about it. And the thing I find funny about the serial debunkers are, they're still obsessed on the subject. One would think there'd come a point where you basically just, like, I said so and therefore it isn't and we're moving on. And then they do. But they don't. They just keep, the bookstore owner obsesses on Bigfoot. And maybe it's because he lives right in the neck of woods where the PGF film happened. A film that at one point had a lot more poignance than it does today, but now is doomed to be inconclusive whether the debunkers or the believers like it or not. And that probably, when I say that, it probably pisses off both sides of the camp, because it basically says that both sides have failed to do their job. The debunkers have failed to definitively debunk the film. The believers have failed the same way in reverse. You have not proven a thing either way, and therefore the mystery remains. And this film will be debated well into the future to no conclusion, which is why I don't obsess on it, because there's no point. It's inconclusive. Some of the other video footage we have, if you pick through it enough, you're going to probably find it to be fake. And unfortunately, as video and AI generated shit gets better, you're going to be able to fake something that looks vividly real, which is going to be a problem that I don't really have a solution to at this point. I think last week in the video, I'm like, I have an account on Night Cafe, which is one of the AI art generators. I got curious and I got playing with that, and not so much to take work away from artists, but we're tangenting again, by the way, but it kind of ties into what I'm saying. One of the things you can do with Night Cafe, and you can probably do it with Midjourney and a bunch of others too, and those are the two top dogs if you want to play with that stuff. You have a filter for color photo portrait where you can make the face of a person. And some are better than others, but some of them, you look at it and you look at it and you look at it. Is it a photo or is it a portrait? Is it a painting? Is it you don't know. And that's where deepfake shit comes from. The thing to look at this present level of its development, and this may change, and if I'm saying this on YouTube and these goddamn AIs are like learning from what we're feeding it with information, because basically information to these things is candy, effectively. The thing to look for is not so much the face, but the hands and the fingers, because they put so much effort into the face that the hands and the fingers usually get mangled and look like these little spaghetti Play-Doh looking abominations. And that is how you tell a fake, for now. I also got playing with a video generated AI thing, and this is actual, it's an amalgamation, which is a combination, for people that don't know what amalgamation means, of existing video footage of actual actors that have voluntarily become the avatars. I assume because you can't just take a person's essence, for lack of a better word, without their consent, one would think, given copyright considerations and all that, but it's their voice, and it's their video, and it's an algorithm. Some people dread the word algorithm, but it's an AI-driven algorithm that basically takes the sum total of the captured video and voice segments of this person, where they can reproduce the person's voice and lip sync the person's facial movements and voice to a text-to-voice, or a text-to-voice or text-to-speech consideration, where you're basically typing something and it could be anything, and this person will say it. Which has some very interesting implications on a number of levels. And for those that are wondering, can this be abused? I could see where you could abuse a living bleep out of this. But those are... Actually, they're no better or worse than, they basically do it for like voiceover stuff right now. So if you're, the example I saw of one, the big one, what is it? Synthesia. They use it for, here's an interesting fishing spot too, by the way. But another vantage spot that you could be seen, but I was over there before, and now you can see it. Look at how much you can oversee out here. And I've launched the drone from, like, not under the tree branch right there, but when you get further out. And you can get up over this and get a good look around. The Synthesia thing, their whole thing is it's like marketing and or like corporate training stuff. So if you don't want to hire an actor to do a like sexual harassment thing for a big insurance company or something. And God knows those things are fucking tedious as hell, pardon my French. The best one of those I did, just make a point, was an interactive one with a lawyer who did a lot of scenario-based role-playing. It actually engaged people and made it much less painful for that, just my one take on that subject. But that's what they use it for, and in playing with it, I wanted to see what they will let you get away with. And they are very, for lack of a better word, tight-assed about, they want those two, they use it for those two use cases, as they call it, and they're saying they're doing it to protect the integrity of the actors, and I understand that. That's a cool thing. They're protecting the people along the lines of the concerns I just raised. There was ethical considerations about now you have a collection of these people in video likeness and their voice, and you have an algorithm that can pretty much make this person threaten the president if you want it to. And I would hope the federal government has ways to pick through there's got to be like a thumbnail or something where no, it's a fake. But there's 1,000,001 ways this could be abused in the wrong hands. But unfortunately, there's multiple companies out there, and there are some that are a lot less tight-assed in what they let you do. Let's just put it that way. I've come across like 2 or 3 of them, and played with the free trial, and like Synthesia and I think the Colossian, I think is the other one, are pretty tight on what they'll let you say or not say. If you say something remotely racy, they're like, nah, you can't say that, and they'll shut you right down. That doesn't go along the use case. And again, ethically, that's good. It's good that those controls are there early on in an early iteration of this. They're shutting down the nonsense. They're not letting it turn into the wild, wild west. Because again, the video stuff is actual real likenesses of actual real people. So you're like basically putting words in people's mouth. There's like, ethically speaking, this is not okay. Just to be clear, this is ethically not okay. Because if it can be done with other people, you're not quite there yet, but I think there's a point where if you have made enough videos, and hello, anyone with a YouTube channel, if you don't, unless you're wearing a freaking complete burqa the whole time you're doing that, there's enough references to your face that at some point an AI can pull together a video avatar based on you. Some of these companies have the ability to make a custom avatar now, and I think that's what they're pushing. I haven't played with that at all, but I think that's what they're pushing. You know, you can put yourself out there as your own avatar, and then basically what you've done then is you've created a file out on their servers where you have a likeness of you that somebody can then go and make you say, you may be the biggest Trump or Biden supporter out there. They can take that photo or that video likeness of you and have you threatening either one of them. And if it's convincing enough, you might get a knock on your door from the Secret Service and you didn't do a thing. Nor did you have any cognizance of what's happening. But there you go. That's the fun. And getting back to my original point now that I've tangented to the far end of the football field, the point of this is we're getting to a point where what video can you trust? Because the AI video generation is frighteningly good as far as imitating people saying things. I mean, we're not fully to the point where I think you could make... you still would have to have a hell of an ape costume and beat the crap out of that. But if you got an avatar going like that and you could put it out against this kind of a background, I'm going to take a long segment break and do my outro now because my camera is, due to the cold, kind of running low on battery, and I might have to switch over to a different camera. I have them, that's not a problem, but it is what it is. Anyway, if you did enough, you're not there yet, but you're not far away from it either. That's the gist I'm getting at. That being said, I'm going to take a segment break right now because the camera's running low. I may have more thoughts, at which point I will engage in other... Back.
From here on out, the camera is going to be a little bit more bumpy because it's my body cam. I had to switch over because the gimbal camera ran out of juice. And so it's going to be a little bit bumpier, but don't think we're quite done yet. I don't think I ever got through the entire thing on ranting about the International Skeptics Forum. I didn't finish my point there. The funny thing is, we got all into the AI video related stuff, which is fascinating, but it's also the ability or the potential ability to abuse this. It would be interesting to find out what ethical boundaries they have now. Because like I said, Synthesia is very specific in what they want you to do with it, and they will shut you down if you start doing anything else. It seems from the feature when I was playing with the free trial the other week, they didn't let you stray far from the script. Some of the other ones, not so much. So the implications of that versus what you can and can't get away with. There's some interesting potentiality there. Anyway, getting back to the skeptical forum, which is basically a front for serial debunkers that are basically a bunch of lefty. A lot of the forum has devolved into basically lefty propaganda to the point where if you're not woke, and let me just be clear, there is legitimate old school political discourse that is Republican Democrat, and then there is the rabid QA or the rabid QAnon nonsense versus the radical woke nonsense. There's no storm coming, so fuck you if you think so, and you're not a Nazi if you don't fully understand what the trans thing is, and you don't use your pronouns. Either way, the world ain't going to end, but fuck you if you think that way, because frankly, your head's up your ass and you're deleting the gene pool. Diluting the gene pool. Forgive me. Fuck the woke and fuck Q, because either one is bullshit. Moving on. That's the only political thing you'll ever halfway hear me say. And if I just insulted you, no one's making you watch my stuff. There is that, it's that lovely vote with your feet kind of a thing. Anyway, the JREF has a undercurrent of wokish to the point of wokish level lefty content, which I find tedious very quickly. But then you have the serial debunker stuff too. And when it comes being applied to the Bigfoot phenomenon, what you're dealing with is one joker in particular, and you know who the F you are, he's gone from, well, everybody is sleep deprived. If they're not sleep deprived, they're seeing a bear. And there's absolutely no possibility beyond these two, which I think we both can expect is complete bullshit. There's a myriad of other possibilities, but according to this jackass, and again, you know who you are, and you know you're a jackass. The point is, when I saw what I saw, I was not sleep deprived. And I hate to tell you this, it wasn't a bear. So, boo-hoo. Your theory is flawed, and I'm being kind in my wording. So, what they're doing is the same lazy shit that the believers are doing. They're trying to apply a logical band-aid by cutting off the pieces of a puzzle piece to make it fit what they want that piece to do. That's a perfect analogy. You're altering the puzzle piece by using scissors to make it work. I've used the same logic back when Rick Knoll and to some degree, yes, the exalted Jeff Meldrum were pushing the Giganto theory on the more believer side. Bigfoot is not Giganto. It's an absolutely butt-stupid theory. And it is so because it follows that same fucking logical BS flaw. But it's reinforced because these are people, Meldrum in particular, that fall into the spectrum of idol worship, which is one of the biggest flaws in the so-called community. And even though I may come across like an arrogant prick, I don't really care. Somebody needs to be out there saying the things that people don't want to hear. And I'm not afraid to do so. So make of that what you will. But getting back, so on the debunker side, yeah, you have people that are like, well, it's either a bear or people were sleep deprived and they weren't sure what they saw. And he comes across like he's trying to apply this to literally thousands of sightings. That's complete bullshit. That's like saying every single UFO scene is swamp gas. Or swamp gas at the right angle to Venus. And if that's the case, then how come the Navy has opened up a new investigation into shit that Navy pilots are seeing in the way of, I guess they call them Tic Tacs. These Tic Tac shaped objects that are doing crazy maneuvers in the air, and these are like trained naval aviators who are not, crackpots. I'm assuming they go through a certain amount of psychological testing to be able to handle the controls of a machine that my taxpaying dollars shit out a couple $1 million more or more to build and maintain. It's probably more than that. When we were shooting down science balloons last week, as well as the spy balloon from China, one of them actually was, wrap your mind around the fact the missile that we used to shoot that thing down, this is a balloon. The last three were basically believed to be scientific balloons that were used by hobbyists that range, you can get these things online for like between $12 and $180, depending on how big it is. The missile that shot these things down, one missile, it's something Sidewinder missile. You can look this up yourself. Goes for about $300 thousand. That's a $300,000 use of your tax money to shoot down a balloon. Now, we didn't at the time know for sure what it was, and with the idea of a Chinese spy balloon being shot down, I have absolutely no issue with that from national security implications. Winnie the Pooh can build another balloon and stop crying, because if you send it over here, we're going to shoot it down again. And there's nothing you're going to do but cry about that, because I'm getting political again. I'm going to shut up. But the fact is, you have the Navy chasing these Tic Tac things that are doing maneuvers that, as advanced as our aircraft are, they have no idea how the hell they're doing that. Because in accordance with modern aviation and the way we understand things, you can't be able to do that. So in all likelihood, they're not us. So that being the case, they're not chasing swamp gas. And it's an act of insulting levels of arrogance to try to convince somebody that's what every single one of them is. And that's the logic on, I just call it the Randy Forum, because you have Flim Flam star, James Randi, which is really all that guy was. They try to make him out to be some skeptical god. He was basically a freaking party level magician who got a reputation for debunking things. Great, good for him. But, he's still only a mere mortal man like the rest of us. Just like Meldrum, just like Todd Standing, just like Matthew Johnson, although Matthew Johnson is a freaking abomination and a freaking complete crackpot, whereas Standing is just a freaking, he's a consummate troll level hoaxer, based on his most recent performance. Enough said. And on the other hand, you have, things like the Giganto theory. It's a altered puzzle piece to fit a theory that makes no sense if you really break down how that would work. So I think I've said enough. I'm going to jump the stream and I'm going to call the video here. So before I make my crossing over here, like, subscribe, offer comments if you agree with me, you think I'm a freaking complete BSer for what you, because I'm challenging your belief system, whatever you want to do. Suggest things you'd like to see me do, but either way, there's going to be a slight delay I'll have to edit because I have to twist this one up to turn it off. So that's why I'm going to do the outro now. And again, thanks for coming along as we've been into this area. It's kind of quiet in here today.